The holo display in the orientation hall had been malfunctioning for 11 minutes, and Sivek was already composing his third memo of the morning. The display, a towering circular projection that usually rotated through the zoo's full species threat classification index, Class A through Class F in descending order of galactic danger, had frozen completely. It showed one entry, centered, unmoving, in the calm institutional font the Galactic Zoological Authority used for things that did not require alarm. Class F, negligible threat. Human male, domestic companion animal. The domestic companion animal in question was sitting directly beneath the projection, on the polished floor of the orientation hall, licking his own paw with the focused intensity of someone diffusing ordnance. He was orange. He was large. He had arrived in a carrier that Fletcher had described as basically escape-proof. I checked twice. The carrier was on its side 4 meters away. The latch was open. Sivek, head curator of the Vekari Galactic Zoological Preserve, stood at 8 feet of dark olive-green scales and dorsal ridge and watched the orange animal transfer his attention from his left paw to the space, directly behind his left ear. Sivek's jaw plate slid apart and then back together. His tongue flicked once, slow. He added a fourth memo to the morning's queue. He got out, said Pellick, the Threnix safety officer, from somewhere near Sivek's left elbow. All 4 of Pellick's amber eyes were fixed on the cat. His blue crest feathers, which should have been flat and relaxed at this early hour, were already at a 15-degree upward angle. The carrier, he got out of the carrier, I can see that. Fletcher said it was escape-proof. Fletcher, Sivek said, with the tone of someone reading a disappointing inspection report, said many things during the intake process. Fletcher was currently at the welcome desk, 30 meters away, filling out the remaining 3 pages of the companion animal supplemental, liability waiver. He had not noticed that Chaos was no longer in the carrier. He had not noticed this because he was deeply focused on question 14, which asked him to describe his companion animal's most recent territorial behavior, and he was trying to decide whether sits on my face at 4 in the morning counted as territorial. The Galactic Zoological Authority had approved the human companion animal exhibition program over Sivek's explicit written objection, his verbal objection, his submitted 40-page impact assessment, and a strongly worded addendum he had attached to the bottom of the impact assessment at the last moment. The program's premise was simple. Class F species humans would visit the preserve with their domestic companion animals to demonstrate Class F social behavior in a live setting. Educational, enriching, completely safe, the authority had assured him, because Class F species presented no measurable threat to zoo operations. Sivek watched Chaos stand up, stretch in a way that seemed to involve more vertebrae than should have been anatomically possible, and begin walking toward the center of the hall with the unhurried confidence of a being who had assessed his environment and found it acceptable. The holo display flickered as Chaos passed beneath it again. It went dark for 1 full second, then reloaded. It still showed the same entry. Class F, negligible threat. Pellick's crest moved to 25 degrees. The apex predator wing, Sector 9, was located at the preserve's eastern arc, separated from the public orientation areas by 2 sets of reinforced sliding doors, a biometric staff lock, and a maintenance drone corridor that ran along the back of the exhibits for equipment access. The maintenance drone corridor had been left open by Drone Unit 4, which had completed its morning humidity calibration of the Myrith Stalker enclosure and had failed to re-engage the secondary door lock because Drone Unit 4 had a firmware issue that Sivek had submitted a repair request about in the 4th month of the current operational cycle. The repair request was still pending. Chaos found the open corridor at the 11-minute mark. Sivek found out about it at the 14-minute mark when the Sector 9 environmental monitoring system registered an unidentified biological presence in the maintenance corridor and flagged it to the curator's office. He was standing at his wall of monitors, reading the alert, when the Sector 9 live feed showed Chaos walking the length of the corridor with his tail straight up, pausing at each exhibit window to look inside with the evaluative expression of someone reviewing rental properties. He stopped at the Myrith Stalker enclosure. The Myrith Stalker, Exhibit 9C, a 6-limbed ambush predator from the Jurassic system, rated Class A on the Galactic Threat Index, responsible for the evacuation of 2 colony settlements in the last decade, was in the middle of its morning patrol circuit when Chaos sat down on the other side of the transparent barrier and looked at it. The Stalker stopped. It stood completely still, all 4 of its forward eyes fixed on the small orange animal on the other side of the glass. Chaos blinked, slow and deliberate. Then he began grooming his left ear with the back of his paw. The Myrith Stalker backed up 3 steps and pressed itself against the rear wall of its enclosure. In the curator's office, Sivek's scales went pale gray from jaw to dorsal ridge. His tail wrapped around his left ankle. He stood there for a moment, watching the monitor, and then sat down heavily in his chair and pulled up at the incident report form. He stared at the top field, nature of incident, for longer than was professionally appropriate. Pellick found him there 4 minutes later, data slate in hand, crest now at full vertical. He's still in the corridor, Pellick said. His beak opened slightly, then closed. The stalker hasn't moved. I know. It's been pressing against the back wall for 6 minutes. I know, Pellick. The stalker has a behavioral threat classification of. I wrote the behavioral threat classification, Sivek said. His tongue flicked twice in rapid succession. I wrote it personally. It is Class A. It has never exhibited a retreat response to any stimulus in the 11 years it has been in this facility. He looked at the monitor. Chaos had moved on to the Volgrith Hound enclosure and was now sitting in front of it, with his tail curled neatly around his paws, studying the interior with calm professional interest. The Volgrith Hound, Class A, pack hunter, courted top speed of 80 kilometers per hour, had moved to the far corner of its enclosure and appeared to be making itself as small as possible. And yet, Pellick set the data slate down on Sivek's desk. He picked it up again. He set it down. Should we retrieve him? The corridor requires a biometric staff entry. I have staff authorization. You would have to enter the corridor. Pellick looked at the monitor. Chaos had turned his head to look directly at the Volgrith Hound camera. Not at the hound, at the camera, with an expression of total, serene contempt. Pellick's 4 eyes blinked in sequence, top pair then bottom pair. I could file a retrieval request, he said. Processing takes 48 hours. File the retrieval request, Sivek said. Fletcher found the Sector 9 viewing gallery on his own, because it was clearly labeled and he had followed the signs, which he felt was a reasonable thing to do. He had also been looking for Chaos for 9 minutes, ever since he had returned to the carrier and found it empty, and the latch open in a way that made him feel personally criticized. The viewing gallery ran along the public side of the apex predator wing, a long curved corridor of amber-lit exhibit windows, and Fletcher had pressed his face against the glass of Exhibit 9C when the Myrith stalker caught his eye. Not because the stalker was doing anything interesting, but because it was pressed against the back wall of its enclosure with all 4 forward eyes pointed at something below the viewing angle. Fletcher shifted left and looked through the maintenance corridor window, which was not a public window but happened to be transparent, and saw Chaos sitting in the corridor between Exhibit 9C and 9D in a beam of red emergency strip lighting, looking entirely at home. Chaos, Fletcher said to the glass. Buddy, how? Chaos turned and looked at him. Then he turned back to the Volgrith Hound enclosure. Fletcher pulled out his visitor information card and looked at the emergency contact protocol on the back. Then he looked at Chaos. Then at the Myrith stalker, flattened against the back wall of its enclosure. He flipped the card over and read the front. Welcome to the Vekari Galactic Zoological Preserve. He flipped it back to the emergency contacts. He decided to find a staff member. Sivek was halfway through the incident report. He had reached the field that asked him to estimate the financial cost of the incident, which required him to assign a numerical value to the dignity of a Class A apex predator, which he felt was philosophically complicated. When the environmental monitoring system issued a second alert, he looked up at the monitors. Chaos had found the maintenance access panel. It was a flat wall-mounted control surface, low to the corridor floor, designed for drone interface during equipment servicing. It was not designed to be interacted with by an orange cat who had apparently decided that the panel's surface was an acceptable place to sit down with his full body weight and begin washing his face. The panel registered the input. It registered it again. It registered it a third time as Chaos shifted his weight and one of his back paws found a secondary control cluster. 3 enclosure doors at the far end of the apex predator wing, exhibits 9G, 9H, and 9I slid open simultaneously. The PA system, calm and institutional as ever, announced unscheduled habitat interaction in progress. Sector 9, staff, please respond. Sivek's scales went gray so fast that Pellick, standing in the doorway, actually took a step back. Sivek's tail wrapped his left ankle so tightly he nearly lost his footing. His jaw plates spread wide. He stared at the monitor showing Exhibit 9G, 9H, and 9I, all empty, doors open, occupants no longer in frame, and then at the monitor showing Chaos, still sitting on the access panel, still washing his face, completely unbothered by the mechanical sounds of 3 enclosure doors completing their travel. Pellick's crest, which had been at full vertical for 22 minutes, somehow went higher. The feathers at the tip began to tremble. From somewhere down the Sector 9 public gallery, carried through the ventilation system with surprising clarity, came Fletcher's voice. Oh, Chaos. A pause, the sound of a carrier latch clicking open hopefully. "Buddy, what did you do?" The three apex predators entered the maintenance corridor from the far end in the order they had exited their enclosures. The Mirith stalker first, then the Volgrith hound, then the Jurassic crawler, which moved in near total silence on 6 articulated legs and communicated exclusively in subsonic vibration that most species felt as a vague sense of personal regret. They filled the corridor with. They were collectively responsible for the documented incapacitation of 43 recorded prey species across 9 star systems. Chaos was sitting in the middle of the corridor. He yawned. It was a full, committed yawn, jaw dropping open, every small tooth on full display, eyes squeezing shut with the effort of it. His spine curved, his front paws extended forward on the floor. He held it for 2 full seconds, and then closed his mouth, blinked, and looked at the 3 apex predators the way someone looks at a bill they weren't expecting. All 3 predators stopped. The Mirith stalker's 4 forward eyes narrowed. The Volgrith hound made a sound, low, involuntary, from somewhere deep in its chest, that Pellick later identified in his report using 3 different xenobiological terms that all translated, roughly, to the vocalization prey makes just before it becomes a spirit. The Jurassic crawler went completely still. Its subsonic output, which Sivek's monitoring equipment registered as a faint 14 Hz pulse, dropped to 0. Sivek watched this on the monitor in his office without blinking for 11 seconds. Then he picked up his communicator to call the emergency containment team, realized his hands were not functioning correctly, set it down, and picked it up again. The communicator screen lit up before he could dial. Doss the Zarnaxi, Interstellar Exhibit Acquisitions Director, filled the screen. His semi-translucent crystalline surface was cycling through orange, red, and a white strobe that made the office feel like an emergency vehicle had parked outside the window. 6 faceted eyes arranged in a ring around his smooth-domed head were all oriented towards Sivek with an intensity that suggested the conversation was not going to be short. His resonance voice came through the communicator with a faint harmonic hum behind it. "I'm looking at your live feed. I'm aware you have access to the live feed." The small orange animal, Doss said. His glow pulsed hard red. "I want it." Sivek's tongue flicked twice. "You cannot have it. I want it for a Class S exhibit." "Class S does not exist. I'm creating it." Doss. Sivek pressed 2 fingers to the bridge of his snout. "You cannot acquire the orange animal because it is not a zoo animal. It belongs to the human. It is a pet." The communicator was silent for a moment. Doss's inner glow cycled through 4 colors in rapid succession. "What is a pet?" Sivek opened his mouth. He closed it. He looked at the monitor showing Chaos still sitting calmly in the corridor while 3 Class A predators held a threat assessment standoff with him at a distance of 4 meters. He looked back at Doss. "It is," Sivek said carefully, "an animal that a human keeps, in their home, for companionship. It lives with them. Yes, voluntarily." A pause. "That is currently unclear." Doss's glow went full white strobe. He said nothing for 3 seconds, which with crystalline species indicated a processing event significant enough to affect structural resonance. "I want it," he said finally. "Whatever it is, I want it." "It is not available," Sivek said and ended the call, which he had never done to a director before, and would probably receive a formal notice about. Fletcher had found Sector 9's public gallery emergency intercom and used it to inform staff that his cat was in the maintenance corridor, which staff already knew, and that he was very sorry about the enclosure doors, which staff believed. He was standing at the gallery window with his carrier open and his hands pressed against the glass when Sivek arrived. "He does this," Fletcher said, by way of explanation. Sivek looked at him. "He opens reinforced exhibit enclosures. I mean the getting out thing." Fletcher gestured at the carrier. "He got out of a locked bathroom once. I still don't know how." He looked through the glass at Chaos, who had not moved from his position in the center of the corridor. The 3 apex predators had also not moved. "Are those the dangerous ones?" "Yes." "Are they okay?" Sivek's jaw plates opened and closed. His scales, which had been pale gray since the panel incident, made a brief attempt at returning to olive green and failed. "They appear to be," he said, with the weight of someone filing a diplomatic report they would rather not file, uncomfortable. Fletcher nodded slowly. Then he leaned toward the glass and called through it in the soft, slightly sing-song voice of someone who has said a cat's name this way 10,000 times. "Chaos, hey, come here, buddy." Chaos turned and looked at him. The Jurassic crawler, which had been motionless for 4 minutes, turned and looked at Fletcher too. Then Chaos stood up, stretched once, same impossible vertebral extension as before, and walked toward the gallery window. Fletcher pressed the carrier opening against the ventilation slot at the base of the glass. Chaos considered it for a moment, then walked in. Fletcher latched it. He looked up at Sivek. Sorry, Fletcher said. He goes where he wants. You know how it is. Sivek did not know how it was. He had spent 11 years managing the behavioral containment of 64 species rated Class A through Class C on the Galactic Threat Index. He had never once described any of them, using the phrase "he goes where he wants" in a tone that suggested this was charming. He said none of this. He clicked his jaw plates together once, turned, and walked back toward his office to finish the incident report. Behind him, in the maintenance corridor, the Jurassic crawler remained still for another 2 minutes after Chaos left. Its subsonic monitoring output, when it resumed, registered at 18 Hz, 4 Hz above its normal baseline. Sivek's monitoring equipment flagged this as anomalous. He pulled the behavioral data later that afternoon and sent it to the xenobiology team, with a note asking for interpretation. The xenobiology team sent back a single line. The subject appears to have found the encounter calming. Sivek read that 3 times. Then he deleted the email and pretended he had never received it. The formal incident report ran to 9 pages. The executive summary was 4 sentences. The threat reclassification request, which Sivek submitted to the Galactic Zoological Authority the following morning, with a cover note he rewrote 6 times to remove language the authority would have described as unprofessional, resulted in the creation of Classification Class S Companion Animal status. Do not engage, do not classify, do not attempt acquisition. The classification had 1 entry. The new zoo promotional materials, revised under emergency directive from DOS, whose inner glow had not fully stabilized for the rest of the operational cycle, listed the Human Companion Animal Exhibition Program as Class S. Interaction experience. Attendance at visitor discretion. Apex Predator staff advised to take personal days. Ren, Sivek caught himself, Fletcher. Fletcher stopped at the gift shop on his way out and bought a small plush figure of a dark green reptilian creature with a dorsal ridge, which he held up towards Sivek through the lobby glass and gave a thumbs up about. Sivek's scales flashed gold, then immediately gray. He stood there for a moment in the amber light of the orientation hall while Fletcher waved and Chaos rode in the carrier with his eyes half closed, already forgetting, and filed his 10th memo of the morning to nobody in particular. Pellic appeared at his shoulder. His crest had not lowered, not even slightly. The tip feathers were still trembling. "Do you think," Pellic said, "they'll come back?" Sivek watched Fletcher push through the exit doors into the light outside. "Yes," he said. Pellic's crest went improbably 1 degree higher.